Implement atoms, which takes the scheme expression. It returns a list of the non-nil atoms contained in the expression in the order that they appear. A non-nil atom is a number, symbol, or Boolean value. Here's the skeleton code we're given. There's a few things we should take note of. First, we can think of atoms as anything that is not a linked list. The second thing we should take note of is that we can think of this function as unnesting any nested linked lists in a linked list, and putting all values into one linked list. This line of thinking is really helpful in constructing our code. And since we're dealing with linked lists, we're going to need to consider different cases again. Luckily, the test already has all the cases we need to consider written out. The base case is if we're passing in an empty list. A list containing all values of an empty list is just an empty list, so we'll return an empty list. Now sometimes we can get stuck in a certain line of thinking that we only need to think about the base case and the non-base case, but this situation is a bit different. If you look at the test cases, you might notice that valid inputs constitute both proper linked lists and atoms. If we could only pass in linked lists, then we'd only have to consider the base case and the non-base case. But since we can pass in atoms just by themselves, we need to account for it. That's where the second condition comes in. If we pass in a single atom, keep in mind that we need to return a list. So we'll return a list containing that atom, which the code refers to as exp, in case you haven't noticed. At this point, you've probably noticed that we haven't made any recursive calls yet. We're going to have to call it in this last line. You should have an intuitive sense to call atoms on the rest of the linked list, and that's good. That's correct. Because this will end up at the end of our eventual list. We'll put it here. In Scheme, this says we'll append it to something. We've dealt with the rest of the list, now we need to deal with the car of the list. Hopefully, you understand that the car of the list can be one of two things, an atom or another linked list. And somehow, we need to deal with both of these cases at once. We need something that deals with both atoms and linked lists. That's atoms, isn't it? We're going to do another recursive call on the car of our linked list. If our implementation is correct, then we're combining the unnested version of the car of the list with the unnested version of the coulter of the list. We're done, and we can move on to the next question.